Okay, good. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order and establish a quorum. Well, I can see we have all board members present here. Uh, with that, we'll go to public comment for closed session items only. Members of the public are welcome to address the board at this time regarding closed session items. Time is limited to 5 minutes per speaker with a cumulative time of 20 minutes. This is a time for the board members, a time for the members of the public to comment and for board members to listen. Did we receive any public comment on closed session items?
We did not.
Do we have any public comment on closed session items? Not hearing any. Do we have any board comment on closed session items? Not hearing any, we'll adjourn into closed session for 3A, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. 3B, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 5495 7.6 CTF. Item 3C, conference with labor negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 CSEA. And item 3D, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, title superintendent. We'll now go into closed session. and convene into open session, report out on closed session items. Uh, Item 4B, we have nothing to report. Item 4C, we have nothing to report. Item 4D, we have nothing to report. And item 4E, we have nothing to report. We'll go now into open um, open business. Will you join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll now go to item 5B, adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
I'll
Eric?
second.
Jeannie? With that, did we receive any public comment on the agenda?
We did. We received 55 comments today.
Okay, excuse me, Superintendent. I believe those were for action item A, so that would be appropriate to discuss those there. This is just on the agenda here, not the item.
Yes, and the only agenda things related to the agenda, and correct me, Jim, if I'm wrong, Dr. Riggs. There were 3 comments on public comment or Brown Act. Was this the appropriate time to bring those up?
Yeah.
Okay. So we received 3 letters from the public that commented that they are concerned about our current practice in relationship to the Brown Act, and that they wish that public comment was allowed live during meetings.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comment on adoption of the agenda? Not hearing any. We'll go. Any board comment?
Just maybe an explanation as to why we don't allow public comment because of some IT issues. Some of us on the board thought that was actually occurring, and we have now determined that it isn't, but it is being looked into. It's not a Brown Act violation, but we are looking into a way to perhaps be able to make public comment available during the meetings.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other board comment on this item?
Yes, I do, Jim.
Okay.
So this is obviously a pretty important decision what's being made tonight about whether we return to campus at all, whether we return to campus partly, 100%, all that. So I just wanted to state sort of what's going through my mind and all the different considerations on this. Obviously, I don't know that there's anybody who objects to some kind of return to campus, because there's always that opt-out provision, right? So to me, it comes down to when and how we return 100% to campus, or do we go to a sort of a hybrid approach and slowly move in to expanding how much time we're spent on campus. So, with those 2 things, there's pros and cons, right? The 100% return to campus right now would be definitely a better delivery of instruction for everybody. It would be more of a return to normalcy, which is good for everybody. Some of the courses and disciplines we have, it's just necessary to have in-person instruction in order to do those things in an adequate way. We could expand our student services, our athletic conditioning. Door could be opened. Kids that are in unhealthy homes, say abusive situations, they'd have access to mandated reporters. Our COVID cases are declining in the county. We've seen other districts returning to campus. Parents can opt out again. So, I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to return to campus. And then there's a lot of good reasons not to return to campus, right? We've got, of course, the paramount consideration here is the health and safety of everybody involved, the parents, the families, the students, the staff, just everybody. And Sonora High School is unique with all of the other districts in our county. For one thing, unlike an elementary school where pretty much instruction is self-contained in one classroom, and that cohort of students is sort of self-contained. In a comprehensive school like Sonora High School, students are intermingling with, the vast majority of the students between different classes and passing periods and all those things. We're also the largest population of all the with the student body of all the schools, and Somerville High School being a comprehensive high school or school is much smaller. So I'm just throwing that in there as a consideration. When we look at going 100% on campus, the issue of parents opting out is an easy one, right? We can provide alternative modes of instruction for those folks, but the staff maybe isn't such an easy one because of the logistics involved there with how we would deal with that. One of the many things that's in my mind about all this, trying to mix all this together, is there is a school district in a rural area that I'm familiar with, and that Mr. Pelfrey actually followed up and contacted them about some information. They've been 100% all semester. And it was very impressive to me to hear that currently, I don't know about the comprehensive data, but currently the high school has 4 active COVID cases that they traced to that school. So it sticks with me. If the other thing is I think we all desire to get back to normal. We all desire to just get back 100% and, do that. But if we do it too quick, and a COVID is traced to the school, everybody that's interested in getting back 100% is
Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt. Jim has lost contact and he's asked that we recess the meeting until he can get back on. Can we hold for a few moments?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try and get him back on here. So we'll pause for a moment.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ed, Jim and I live in the Columbia area, and internet reception isn't 100% reliable. Kind of like the weather, it changes.
Understood. We're working on it.
I apologize. I'm back on now.
Okay, should I continue, Jim?
Yeah, we could, Joe, just question I had for you, Eric, is this a discussion that may be more appropriate to the next agenda item?
Well, I
Because
thought that's what these board, I thought the
this
board
is-
comments for the agenda item.
This is just for the agenda, setting the agenda. And then we move
Oh,
to
I'm
the
sorry. I
specific.
thought I heard any comments on the agenda item. I'm sorry. Yeah,
On adopting the agenda, I'm sorry.
okay.
And I may have misspoken for when I did. I was trying to get that to be the right time, so I apologize if I was off.
Yeah, we're just adopting the agenda at this point. It's, okay, I do apologize. Are there any other board comments on adopting the agenda? Okay, not hearing any, we'll do student advisory vote.
Yes.
Okay, well, roll call, trustee Smith,
Aye.
trustee Norton,
Aye.
trustee Andel,
Aye.
trustee Scott,
Aye.
trustee Riggs, motion carries. We'll now go on to action item, discussion item 6A, approve an instructional model for the second quarter of the 2020-2021 school year during COVID-19 pandemic. Superintendent Pelfrey.
Based on the guidance and instruction we were given in the letter issued by the Tuolumne County Public Health Office on July 30th, the district made a decision to provide distance-only learning until at least the end of the first quarter, October 16th. This decision provided the families of students and staff with some certainty so that they could plan for the opening of school. In August, school districts in Tuolumne County were instructed by the Tuolumne County Public Health Office to submit plans for any proposed return to in-person instruction. Those plans were based on the California Department of Public Health's COVID-19 industry guidance for schools and school-based programs. Sonora Union High School District returning to school plan during COVID-19 was approved by the Tuolumne County Public Health Office on September 9th. To meet the requirements of this plan, a hybrid opening is required. A hybrid opening includes a mix of distance learning and in-person learning that limits the number of students on campus so that social distancing and hygiene requirements are met. As of October 6th, 2020, reflecting an email from the Tuolumne County Public Health Office, at this time, the TCPHO is not requiring districts to submit their plans for in-person instruction, and public health does not have to approve plans or the mode of instruction when schools open, although this may be subject to change. Therefore, board direction is requested as to which options to implement. Following are the available options. Option A, all students on campus. Option B, hybrid, some students on campus. Option C, distance learning, no or very few students on campus. Each of these options provided to the board have risks associated with them, ranging from issues related to COVID-19 to mental health issues to liability issues. Considering the diversity of opinion and risk related to each option, the administration is recommending option B.
Okay, I would move that we adopt Plan B to be implemented at such time that all necessary and required safety modifications and safety equipment and safety protocols are in place and fully operational. I'd ask for a second.
I'll second the motion so we can discuss.
Okay, motions on the table. Superintendent Pelfrey, we've received public comment.
Yes, we've received 55 emails of public comment. Of those 55, 36 of them were in favor of option A, opening school to all students. They, to summarize some of the points that they've made, one is that students are suffering socially, that students are suffering mental illnesses, that academically students are struggling, and that students are not able to participate in many of the activities that they consider important and some of the milestones in their lives and in their educational lives. So that the vast majority of the feedback we received reflected that. We received three 3 statements of support for option B. Those were based on providing students an opportunity to come back to school, but also measuring out some of the effects to make sure that student safety and staff safety is being maintained. We had 1 statement for option C, which was distance learning, and that was based on the safety factor for students and staff. We had many others that are more nuanced, that discussed many things from that didn't make recommendations but urged caution. We have some that reflected that they wanted to be more a part of this discussion. There were several options of different hybrid options that they proposed. And I think it's important to note that while we, number one, appreciate all of this feedback and input from the public, that each one was responded to personally by our administrative assistant, Cindy Costello, and then was forwarded to board members to be read. And that all of this correspondence will be placed in, as it always is, into our minutes and will be available for the public to read.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
I would like to say something if I have a moment.
Okay,
Good evening. I do not envy your position tonight. Unfortunately, how to navigate current situations has become a very polarized issue. I think there are some things everyone can agree on. Everyone wants to go back to our old normal. Everyone wants our students to be healthy, happy, and well educated. It is important to tend to both mental, social, or to all 3, mental, social, and physical wellness. Teachers are a unique type of individual. They often put the needs of their and concerns of their students and of their students' well-being before the needs and concerns of their own, and sometimes before their own family. They do this job because they love their students. That makes it very hard for some teachers to say publicly that they are worried about their or their own family's well-being. Even harder yet when some people are saying that it is best for students to go back in full time. This statement implies that if you say something in the contrary, you do not want what's best for students. But that is not correct. It is a different viewpoint. In the letters you have already read today, there are teachers and counselors and community members that want students to come back to school in 100% full normal capacity. They cite mental and social wellness as reasons to come back and have fully expressed that opinion well. There are also teachers and community members that believe that what is best for students is to keep their physical well-being safe while providing all the mental support possible so that students, their teachers, and everyone's family can survive this difficult time. Some staff feel that coming back to 100% full normal capacity is the safest choice. Some staff feel that a more cautious path is the safest choice. You, as trustees of Sonora Union High School, are burdened to try to figure out what is the safest method of education in order to provide physical, mental, and social safety for our students, staff, families, and our community. This is a very difficult time. Most people do not want to be divided, but this has become a very divisive situation. I do not envy your position. It is probably the most difficult decision that a Sonora Union High School board has ever had to make, since the consequences can be so final. Thank you for your guidance and strength.
okay, thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Okay, not hearing any, we'll go down to board comment. Student trustee Grimes.
Alrighty, so tonight I have a lot to unpack for you guys. For starters, I put out a poll on Instagram, which I have a majority of the student body who follows me and interacts with my posts. And I asked if students wanted to return, with a total of 61 students voting for yes for full-time and 31 voting for no. Keeping that into consideration, there are also protests going on down at the school to return full-time as we speak tonight. From the organizer of that protest, she wrote a little excerpt I would like to read to you guys. We will, excuse me, sorry. The memories I have made with friends in high school will last a lifetime, but I was really looking forward to my senior year. My senior sunrise on the field, my very first day of school, my last cheer season, my last homecoming. Those are all the things I have already missed out on, not to mention the things we will miss if we don't go back. We will miss our last formal, scholarship night, senior projects, our last prom, our last senior night in Disneyland, sober grad, and not least of all, our graduation. COVID-19 has already taken so much from us students, and it is now up to us to make a decision so students can go back to school right away. Thank you for your time. From there, on the opposite perspective, I want to just touch on mine. Through this COVID-19 process, although we've had a low death rate of only 2 in the county, 1 has affected my family. It is an absolutely horrifying time to live through, and the safety of it, in my opinion, is not worth rushing into and is a huge decision we all hold currently. Students are ranging from opinions from I want to go back but no masks, or I want to go back full time because it's not safe at home right now and school is my escape. From there, we have the other extreme where students are doing extremely well on COVID-19, as seen with personally my little sister who was failing out last year and this year has straight A's. These are all examples of the polarizing differences we have between each individual student that isn't really seen or considered. Some are doing well, some are doing tremendously horrible. It is something we all have to hold into consideration and remember that 1/3 of our student body is currently failing, but there are 2/3 of our student body that are not as well. Most students said that they should feel like they should have an online option to stay online if they're in high-risk families, or to stay at school but with strict guidelines, such as half the school on one day, half of the school on another, in order to limit the amount of students that are coming in contact with each other. Also, another student representative that has come up to me spoke on the factor that she believes going back to school is pointless due to the factor if we have another COVID outbreak, we're all just going to be thrown back into this cycle of being on independent study per se, or just distance learning, which will restart the entire process of grieving that we went through back in March. Excuse me. I do want to say this is a very hard decision we have tonight, and I really appreciate the time you guys have put into listening to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other board comments?
I guess I could just continue on where I left off, Jim. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. And Acacia, I just wanted to comment, I really appreciate your representation of the students. Like what I heard from you is like a real objective presentation, right, of those who you represent. I just want to tell you, I appreciate that. So anyway, so to tie up like how I'm considering the pros and cons for returning 100% and not, right, on the last part, if we rush to getting back on campus 100% like we all desire to do, if we do that too fast, and just like I think Debbie Hopper mentioned and somebody else, if we end up with a case on campus, we are going to be taking 5 steps back. And those of us who want to be 100%, we're going to be not realizing that for a long time because of that. So that's just something else that floats in my mind. In terms of the process of the planning, which is very important to me, and especially an important decision like this, and in the inclusion and discussions of the various stakeholders involved, right? That's very important to me. I feel satisfied that Mr. Pelfrey has done a good job of that process, albeit maybe not perfect. I don't know if you can get to a perfect process that, you know, includes every single body and every word. And I do feel satisfied that Mr. Pelfrey had done a good job of that process. And we all know, no matter what the decision is tonight, it's not a win-win. Like, it's not going to be 100% satisfaction. So we need to, I'm suggesting everybody, whatever the decision is tonight, we need to be responsible and respect that process at least was a good, fair process to get to this point and making a decision. Okay, so to some of my personal opinions on here, we need to get back 100%. We need to do that. I mean, that's it. There's just no, to me, valid argument against that. But we need to do that responsibly for all the reasons I've already stated. I am a teacher. For those of you who don't know, I do teach adults, maybe a little different than teaching children. But let me tell you, after 26 years of teaching, this has been my worst experience, is teaching remotely. I despise it. I know for some that's a good experience, but I just despise it. I want to be back in the classroom, right? So that's my strong desire. But I don't let that emotion, that desire override how I process a good decision, trying to do the best I can as a responsible board member here. I do keep in mind that I need to stay objective, look at all the issues, balance, and weigh everything that way. So I believe that not returning 100% immediately is it's not responsible to do that. I do believe returning in a hybrid mode and progressing to 100% as quickly as and as reasonably as possible is the answer. And we can do that in a very thoughtful way. And I think we can do that pretty timely considering the situations. So option B to me seems like the best balance of all these interests. However, I'm going to ask to modify it in a few ways that I'll do, which Jim, would this be the time if I want to motion to modify it, or is that?
Okay, I would have you propose an amendment.
Okay. So I propose an amendment or motion to modify, whatever it is. We already have an athletic conditioning plan that's been approved by the CDPH and the CIF. It's already somewhat on our books. I feel satisfied that that was done in a responsible manner. It meets the guidelines of those external agencies. And I would like to seek incorporating that plan into this option B plan so that we can have that potential opening up of the athletic conditioning along with that. And the other amendment I would seek is I don't really know if 4 weeks between a 1 day and a 2 day in-person campus is practical. I just don't know. But I would like to see that happen sooner, but far be it for me to decide that that's a good idea. What I would like to do is to give Mr. Pelfrey the discretion to move to the 2 days when he feels that it's time. The teachers are acclimated to the asynchronous teaching and whatever else. I just don't want to tie Mr. Pelfrey's hands into this 4-week time period if it can happen sooner. So with those two motions, I would support option B. The last thing I just want to sort of do a sales pitch on all of those of us who are involved in this, all the stakeholders and everybody. We know that 2020 has just brought on some crazy, divisive issues. I think Ms. Hopper pointed that out as well. This particular one's been very heavy on my mind. I take my elected position very seriously. I don't just show up to a meeting and just, throw something out there as a decision. It's been sleepless nights in some cases, trying to research and just really dig in and just try to do the best I can to make the most responsible decision here, weighing all these things. What I would request of everybody involved here is that we act responsibly about the problem, not just from our own particular angles. And again, I'll remind you that I'm a teacher who wants to get back to the classroom, something awful. But I'm putting that emotion aside and looking at all the surrounding factors here, trying to be more rational about this. And I'd sure like to see our Sonora community, our Sonorian family, show the rest of the world when we have such a emotional topic and a decision to make, when there's very strong needs. You know, we got parents who are the experts in what their families need. We've got staff who I consider the experts in figuring out logistics and how we're going to do things. It's very, very emotional and very important needs that we're hearing from all sides here, that we show the rest of the world we're not like the rest of these discussions we're seeing out there. We're more responsible, and we can trust a process that included all these various needs and opinions and strong emotions, and we can accept objective discussions and then a final decision based on all that. So that's what I have to say. Sorry for the length of my comments.
Okay, I have a point of order here, perhaps deferring to Mr. Pelfrey. How do we include these amendments to the original motion?
It has to be voted on. He has to make a motion to amend the original motion. It has to be seconded and then voted on. I just looked it up.
Oh, you did. Thank you, Jeannie.
Shall
Okay,
I do so, Jim?
do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, Nancy Scott, second. Eric motioned the amendments. Nancy seconded him. Is there any discussion? Or-
I would like to say something.
Okay,
Sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
go ahead.
Okay. I would like to say an idea that was thrown out there by the student body just on the hybrid plan is having these failing students that are struggling the most going back to campus before we take all the students that are doing exceptionally well, and starting to focus on them first, get them caught up, and then the students that are doing well, slowly integrate them back in as well.
I think as part of the motion gives Mr. Pelfrey that leeway to be flexible. Any other comment?
Okay, I think we need to, so we're not asking for comments on the motion, but on amending the motion.
On
and then
amending the motion, yes, we need to either amend or not amend the motion at this point, so we can move on to the discussion. Yes. Okay, not hearing any additional comments on the amendments by Eric, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll call. Student preferential vote.
I am going to abstain from this one.
Okay, roll call. Trustee Smith,
Aye.
Trustee Norton,
No.
Trustee Andal,
Aye.
Trustee Scott,
Aye.
Trustee Riggs, aye. Okay, the amendments carry. So we'll now move back to board discussion on the motion.
Okay, I'll jump in. I have a list of bullet points, but between Eric and Acacia, they mostly got touched on. So let me just comment on a couple of things to keep this moving. I too would love to have all of our students back on campus. And that is our ultimate goal, and as quickly as possible, but as Eric has said, responsibly. You know, I am not an epidemiologist, but so I have to look to those health experts to tell me what is realistic and safe. And they say masks and social distancing. And with the number of students that we have and on our campus, social distancing would be very difficult, if not impossible, to manage with all students on campus every day. So I know many of the letters, they were all very well written, obviously very heartfelt. People have real concerns about this very difficult decision. And several people indicated, you know, there's a very, very few incidents of students contracting and succumbing to COVID-19, but I don't know that we want any of our students to be that anomaly statistic to suffer from having this virus. And so I urge caution and to move as quickly as possible to a safe opening with all students on campus. But until then, I feel that a hybrid model is the safe option for us to pursue.
Okay, I would like to ask Superintendent Pelfrey if he or his staff could give a brief report on the status of the required safety modifications and safety equipment and safety protocols. Are they ready to be implemented, or are they being implemented? If you could give us a status update.
Yes, the entire district staff and has worked very hard to prepare for bringing students back to school, particularly in with 50% of them coming back in a hybrid model. Mark Alberto, our director of maintenance and operations, has taken on a large bulk of this, and particularly for hygiene and social distancing. So, Mark, if you'd like to share your efforts.
Thank you. Can you all hear me? Thank you, Ed. Good evening, board members and members of our staff. Thank you for having me this evening. This is a very complex situation, and I feel everybody, parents, myself included, with having 3 girls at home going through this ourselves. It's complex, to say the least. I know there's a lot that we need to get through tonight, so I'll go through quickly just kind of my world and what we've been dealing with to get us to the point we're at right now. In terms of our PPE, our equipment, I'll give you a rundown of what we've purchased and what we have on hand here on campus right now. For our disposable masks, our 3-ply disposable masks, we have 110,000 masks. And I did the math on this and figured off of 500 students on average 30 days from here until graduation that should take us through, that we would have enough for each student every day for whatever reason needed. And we did so early to purchase this because of the wait time. And we were worried about that if we didn't get them, we would never get them. And here we are. So I'm glad that we started early and got that. Our cloth masks, we have 3,500 right now. Those are the washable masks. We have those. Our face shields for our instructional, for our teachers and for students if they require them. We have 200 of those with the drapes on the bottom that are required to wear on campus here, that we are told to do so. In terms of hand sanitizer, every single room, everywhere on campuses have, as you walk in the door, has a hand sanitizer dispenser and is readily available to go, so that you don't travel through the room to use a hand sanitizer. It's right at the door, so you can disinfect before you enter, so to speak. And those are ready to go with plenty of backup if needed to refill. We have Tyvek suits. We have 24 Tyvek suits for our employees. If in case of an outbreak or anything that we need to sanitize, we have the protective equipment to do so for them. So those were hard to get, but we have those. We also have goggles to wear if we need to. Our hand thermometers, we have 120 of those. We figured on giving enough handheld thermometers to each staff teacher, specifically in a room, that if it's needed or if something was missed and they felt the need to scan a student or themselves, they can do so without asking or waiting, so that they felt safe in doing so. Gloves aren't an issue at this time. We have plenty of gloves in various sizes to give out to staff and to keep for ourselves and for our custodian crew daily. We purchased a walk-through thermometer scanning checkpoint that we have set up inside our admin office right now to scan either parents or students or staff as they walk in an orderly fashion, distanced, so that they can see what their temperature is, and it will actually alarm them by showing in the red if they're hot or not. And so we have that set up and it's working fine. And then also our plexiglass shields for our desk. We're having trouble getting those. They're a hot commodity right now. We have a supplier we're working with, and I feel confident that we'll get enough in if they're needed in the future here. What we have set up right now is we do have plexiglass barriers in our admin. We have some in our library. We have some in our cafeteria area. In the areas that we felt was right now necessary for protection, and we have extra that we purchased just lately that we also are installing as we speak this week. and next week in the areas that will require those before the students come back. So I feel pretty confident in our PPE and the equipment that we have purchased right now, that we're set up to go. Along with that, the cleaning guidelines that we also are following are from the CDC, the EPA, the Tuolumne County Public Health Office, JPA, and OSHA. So we have a pretty broad spectrum there that we're following to the T of what we're required to do. It's a two-step process to clean first and then disinfect. Highly touched surfaces every hour we are doing right now, daily and in evenings, so that it has dwell time. If there was anything potentially infectious there, our products are killing it, and it's ready to go for the next morning, clean and sanitized and ready to go for our staff, which would turn into students daily also. So I feel good that we're doing that right now, and we have that system in place. I've also looked into extensively with the ASHRAE. It's the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers. They are setting the guidelines and standards for our HVAC systems for our campus in terms of filtration for air in our classrooms. They are giving us guidelines that when you can, to increase your filtration to what they call a MERV 13. And MERV is basically, it's a filter that will trap smaller particulates. And so what we have right now that before COVID, the school that we have purchased that I've set up is MERV 11, which will still capture the very, very small particulates. But it's what we can use for our systems. We still have old HVAC systems, and we have new that we just got done last year. Those systems I can upgrade to MERV 13, and we have done that, and I'm waiting for some to come in this next week also. So we look like we're in good shape there in the systems that can handle that. And in the systems that can't handle that, we have the very best that we possibly can right now. We have a schedule of when we change those air filters. They've been changed and they're ready to go right now. And they still will capture the very small particulates. I've also talked to our JCI contractors that worked last year to install the new HVAC system. They have given me a printout, and they did some studies in the engineering on their side. And I'll read to you very briefly what they had given to me is, there is no significant COVID-19 indoor air quality benefit switching from MERV 11 to MERV 13. In fact, it would require rebalancing your systems. As we talked about, there would need to be a close look to see if your current system would even be able to handle the denser filter. Our problem right now is, for one, our air quality with the smoke has not been good. And those filters that we have put in place already, the smoke is destroyed a lot of them. So we've had to go back through and change those out in preparation to have kids on campus. The filters are very costly, and we're trying to do our best to save the district money, but also be mindful of the fact that we need to have these filters on hand and readily available to change when we get students back here as well. On average, we keep a 2-year supply just for intense purposes. So we have enough to change out, and we're fine there. And so I'm just waiting for some of the MERV 13s to come in so that we could finish putting those in areas, but I believe those will be in next week, and we'll be good to go there as well. Aside from our HVAC, our drinking fountains, we've been instructed to close all drinking fountains for use of students to share the drinking fountains. The problem with some of our drinking fountain systems are we also have hydration stations that will fill bottles for kids to drink water. The problem is those systems are tied all together in our plumbing. And so it would take quite a bit to go through and cut and valve and shut off systems to work just the hydration stations versus the drinking fountains. New products have come out recently that I'm looking at purchasing very quickly, is to be able to lock the top of the drinking fountain spout so that the drinking fountain spout cannot be used, but then the hydration stations can be turned back on so that the students will have the ability to fill up for water on campus. They still could put their head underneath or do something like that in the hydration stations, but the thought was that water would be readily available for them on campus to be able to use that. So we're working with that right now to make sure we have that system up and running. In the classrooms, this morning I wrote an email to all staff And I will read that to you really quickly. This is basically the care package or the COVID-19 readiness or reopen readiness package of items that we're giving to the teachers to have in their arsenal for their classrooms to be able to reopen. They will get a cleaning product in a spray bottle for highly touched surfaces for them to clean in between periods. One big roll of paper towels, and it's a good sized roll. And we're hoping that we haven't tested it out, but we're hoping one roll will last a week. We're not sure yet, but we do have lots of extras so that if it doesn't, we can keep refilling and keeping stock in that. One face shield with the bottom drape, one pack of 5 cotton washable masks, 5 cotton black washable masks, and the black ones are a little bit different. They're a thinner material, but they're a little bit bigger masks. So we're giving them to try out to see if it will fit versus the thick white cotton ones. So they'll have that to try out and see which one works for them as well. One handheld temperature scanning device and 4 boxes of 3-ply disposable masks, 50 per box. And those are to give out to students, or they can use them themselves. But those are what we have the most of. And that's what they can hand out to the kids who either forget them or don't have them, or for some reason need one. That's readily available in each classroom for them to give out to the students. So at no time should a student be walking around or have or not be able to have a mask. We will absolutely have masks for our students and our staff. Moving on to our COVID-19 symptoms classrooms. So we have used what we call our green room, which is our old drama department room, has transformed into a COVID symptoms room. So if any time a student comes down with symptoms, they are to be escorted to that room, and we have set up partitions and drapery closures, if you will, and basically 4 different cubicles to house the students in there until they could be picked up by their parents or some other means of getting them help or out to school so that we can get them tested. So that is all finished and is in place. The same for our campus up at Casino High. Also, we've transformed our computer lab to house the same situation. And so they're also set up. So when I talk about Sonora High School, I'm also including Casino High School with the same issues and the same PPE that we give down here that Roy up there has set up as well. So right now, our biggest hurdle that Ed and I have been working on is basically classroom sizes and overload in different periods. And so we've been working really diligently and very hard on trying to figure out how we can achieve social distancing still in classrooms that will only allow maybe 15 or less students, but that class itself has 18 or more, and to see where we can move things around and that would make the most sense so that we can still keep that 6 feet of distancing. When we originally measured out in June and came up with that number for each classroom, we had different information given that has now changed, or maybe it's been looked at differently. That makes a little bit more sense now as we've gone on. That has changed, so that now we're looking at we may be able to add 2 or 3 more students in these areas that would actually allow for that classroom to be a little bit bigger and still follow the guidance of 6 feet. So we're working on that right now. And we came to some good conclusions today that it looks very promising to be able to fit those students in that hybrid model back in some of these classrooms so that we can do that for sure. It's very hard. We've been working really hard on planning, purchasing, and lead times for a lot of this equipment. Trying to be very mindful of the money and for the district, and making smart choices to get things early on. And the problem has been distribution. If COVID-19 was in a warehouse that was making the product that you wanted, they would shut things down, and you weren't guaranteed to get them within 4 weeks or a month or longer. And so it's been really tough to get a lot of these things, and things that we did back in June, we're just now getting in. And so I feel very blessed and lucky that we did so earlier on, and we've been able to get things to where we are now that we can open. But if there's things that we need moving forward, that may be an issue that we won't be able to get them in time to do what we would need to do. But as it stands right now, I think we're in a really good position to move forward in a hybrid. And I think that we can do so safely.
Thank you, Mark. I can't say enough about the effort of the whole staff. We've also made changes in transportation. So our transportation would come in earlier. Our buses would come in earlier, so we could stagger the arrival times of students coming onto campus. That was one of the requirements of the TCPHO, and I appreciate Chet for helping with that, our director of transportation. So I believe that we are prepared. There's a few things that we still have to get taken care of, but we would be prepared to bring in a hybrid model quite soon.
Okay,
Jim,
thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up, Jim?
Sure.
So, Mark, I think it just goes without saying your planning is very detailed, and obviously you put a lot of effort into this. It's very impressive about your plan, and even thinking about contingencies and all that. I just have a question. I haven't thought about this for a while, but in the early months of this COVID crisis, I recall hearing ideas that there might be some I think it was ultraviolet lights or something that might help kill or mitigate the COVID threat or something. Do you recall any of that? Apparently it panned out to be unfounded, because I haven't heard that for quite a while.
Yes, so I've looked into those also. I will tell you they're very expensive, and they're also tough to get because everybody's purchasing them and buying them. They are a good addition to your plan, but they aren't an end-all be-all purchase that will then solve all your issues. The same with filters with the HVAC. It's all of kind of inconclusive. All together will help limit your risk, but it isn't a cure for. And so there's still new technology out there. There's some very good technology of issues we could look into purchasing. The only problem is it's not really a plug and play. It's more of an install, expensive, timely type of situation that it's something we could plan on, but we wouldn't be anywhere close to being able to do something like that in the time that we would open. So when I touched on that and looked into that, I think it would have exhausted our COVID money to be able to spend. And so I had to weigh what the benefits would be versus the cost, and it was very minimal compared to what we had going on. So I moved on with that. The same with the purification air distribution equipment as well too, to put in the classrooms. It's the same type of deal with that also. There's something that's good to have in your plan if you can plan for it, but it's something that right now is almost impossible for us to get, and enough of them to actually do something. So we switched gears and looked at just beefing up our filtration systems and our HVAC, and doing everything we possibly could to get it here quickly to be able to help protect our people and the campus and our equipment. And so,
well, thank you for that information. It might be something maybe we could keep in mind, is if we could add reasonably more of those kind of safety devices, maybe it'll speed up the progression of moving towards 100%. That'd be great. But of course, balancing the costs and effectiveness and all that kind of stuff. Thank you, Mark.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Trustee Grimes?
Alrighty. I had a couple of questions for you guys as well. Mr. Pelfrey, Mr. Morrow, or Mr. Alberto, I would love. Yeah. So you mentioned for students wouldn't have a need to not wear their masks, but on campus, we already do have an issue with students following the rules. Do we have an idea what disciplinary set would be for students that just refuse to wear a mask or will take it off during class or anything like that? For starters, I have a couple more after.
Yes. We're developing a contract to go out to parents that if they're going to have their students return on in an in-person basis, that they will wear their masks as indicated. The only time that you would take your mask off was if you were eating or drinking. And as with most things, we would be a situation where you are um, asking somebody to, if they are not doing what has been instructed, we'll give them that instruction. And if they respond in kind, then that's your first warning. If it happens again, that's the second warning. Third time, then we would remove that student and they would go to distance learning.
Alrighty. Second off, I was curious, you mentioned the drama room being turned into an area for students who show symptoms of COVID. Do we know how long they would be out, per se?
Yes, if a student or staff member is symptomatic, they would need to go home, and they would have a 10-day period of quarantine or isolation, unless they were able to get a negative COVID test or get a alternative diagnosis from a doctor that explained that whatever the symptom they had was not related to COVID, but was related to another condition, and then they could return at that time. If we can't get a negative test or an alternative diagnosis, then they would be able to return after 10 days, and where they have not been symptomatic for 24 hours before the return.
Also, one last question. Thank you, by the way. For the students that are planning on going back in the hybrid model, if it gets passed tonight, would those students be required to be tested or quarantined for 2 weeks before going back to just make sure that they don't have any symptoms or just aren't symptomatic if they are asymptomatic beforehand?
No, we would be doing symptom checking at wellness stations of all students when they come onto campus. We'll have 8 wellness check stations set up around campus. Students will need to go to those stations where they will answer a question of whether or not they have any symptoms, and we will check their temperature. And then if they are not symptomatic, then they will scan their ID card and print them a receipt that will log them into our system that they've been symptom checked, and they will take a paper receipt to their class, and teachers will need to see that receipt as they come into class. And students will keep the receipt throughout the day. If they, for any reason, lose the receipt, they go back to the attendance office and will be symptom checked again and receive a new receipt.
And one last question. As information has been coming out, it has been saying more and more that kids around my age are more likely to be asymptomatic for COVID-19. What would be the school's plan for trying to deal with the asymptomatic side of students? Because it is a majority of students that will get it will be asymptomatic.
Well, when we don't see symptoms, there's not much we can do, unfortunately. But when students do start to have symptoms, what we've been told by the county health and the CDPH and also the CDC is that when a student eventually does have symptoms, at some point they will, or they will spread that symptom to somebody else, then we would go back 2 days at the minimum and trace their contacts. And then when we start doing contact tracing, that would be turned over to the county department of the county health office, and they would do contact tracing from that time. That is one of the reasons that it's so necessary for us to stay socially distanced and to cohort students. The Tuolumne County Department of Health has the capacity to contact trace 60 to 80 people per day. If what we've been told by the county health office is if they exceed that number of people that they have to contact trace a day, then we would most likely be ordered back into distance learning, because they have to be able to trace that. So what we try to do is set up our rooms with only 50% of the students, so that most all of our rooms are 6-foot distancing between students, and always 6-foot distancing between students and staff. And rooms where that wouldn't work, for instance, a culinary arts room, where we may have to have a small group of students in what we call a cohort, a small cohort of 4 to 5 students that is stable and doesn't change. So that if one student in that group is symptomatic or does show symptoms at some point and we need to contact trace, we know who that small group of students are. Also, one of the ideas with our hybrid plan is we've reduced the length of the day, and we've reduced, as opposed to having a lunch, we're sending students home for lunch and instead providing lunch during the brunch time. Close contact is defined by the CDC as being within 6 feet of a person for more than 15 minutes. So we're reducing all situations except for those small cohorts that we've identified that are necessary educationally, to make sure that we don't have people closer than 6 feet to one another for more than 15 minutes, to reduce the
right.
number of people that have to be contact traced.
Last question. Thank you. So for the small cohorts, say they have multiple classes like chemistry, you have to have partners in that, and then you have culinary next, so that's automatically now a second group that's been exposed. How is that planned on being worked with?
And what we are looking at is it's a matter of limiting the number of cohorts a student is a part of. So when we've looked at our student body, just the example you gave is the most classic example, that we may have a student who is involved in a career technology education class that might require a small cohort, and then at the very most, then the other place that we're looking at besides CTE classes are lab science classes. So that would limit a person to have cohorts of a total of 10 people, and we would know who those students were. The other classes they had during the day, science, math, Spanish, all those classes would be socially distanced. So in those classes, they would not spend more than 15 minutes within 6 feet of anybody else. That also, like I say, with brunch is only 10 minutes long. So while we'll be trying to achieve social distancing at that time, no student would have spent more than 15 minutes with any other student within 6 feet.
Also, you keep saying things and sparking more questions, so my apologies if this is taking forever. With lab science classes, is there any way where, like, personally, I had sketches last year and she used to do demonstrations in front of the class. Is there any way where you could get rid of the hands-on part of it for the most part and have teachers demonstrate it? Or example, colleges are using Labster and it's virtual, so you're doing it completely on a Chromebook or anything like that.
Well, one of the things we would be cohorting in those lab science classes so that students would be able to participate in those lab sciences and those experiments the very best that we can safely, because it is important and it's essential for students to go on to college to have those lab experiences.
And one last question, they keep coming up, is for students that already have their virtual learning schedules, when going back, because of you have these small cohorts, so you need most of the kids that are in multiple of these classes that require that to be around a minimum of 9 of the same people and be in that same group. Will schedules change as well, keeping them in the same classes but moving their schedule around to keep these students together?
That's one thing that we're working on that right now. If it all depends on the results of a vote. And then we have a survey ready to make sure that we know if a hybrid model were approved, then we would send out a survey tonight to find out which students would be staying on distance learning. And we would ask that people make that commitment for the remainder of the semester. And then we would start to build our master schedule based on that. Hopefully, very few changes. Ms. Sells and Matt Leamy, our director of technology, our technology manager, have a plan for starting from singleton classes first to build a schedule out. So we wouldn't be changing schedules to keep people in a cohort, but we just make sure that we are socially distanced in the majority of classes, and the classes that do require cohorting stay stable.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any other board comments?
I have a quick question, please, for Mr. Alberto. I'm just curious, have you guys addressed the bathroom or uses of the bathroom? I know it's kind of an odd thing to bring up, but as far as how that's going to work with the social distancing as well as being cleaned per student, or how, I don't know how that's going to work. So do you guys have any idea of a game plan for that?
So what we've looked at right now is it's kind of tough in the bathroom situation, but we're looking at we've been wiping high touch surfaces every hour, and during the day, and then in the evening also deep cleaning and sanitation there. But our plan would be to limit the amount of kids going in and out of the bathroom, basically, I think, and Ed, correct me if I'm wrong here, but to allow social distancing. But then also it gets a little tough for the custodians to actually go in there and clean the bathrooms and completely close it down, and then go through and completely clean the bathrooms in a timely manner, then open it back up to have one person go in there and use it again, and then basically we would have to clean it again. So we're working through that right now, that we plan on going through the bathrooms and checking and making sure that, you know, things are loaded, things are fine, there's soap, there's hand sanitizer, everything is loaded and good. And then if it looks like that things are getting to the point where they need to be restocked, or it's dirty and it's getting pretty bad, that we shut it down, we clean and we keep moving on, because we look to have a high number of our bathrooms open so that we have hand washing stations available for the students and for staff as well. So, I mean, just to let you know right now, we have a total of 19 sinks for boys and 18 sinks for girls, with the exception of being able to open 9 more for each one. And so when Mr. Pelfrey and myself were looking at the ratio of this, that by far would exceed the number of sinks that would be needed available for the students and staff to be able to wash their hands without having hand washing stations added to our campus. And so it's something that we're looking at really closely to be able to do efficiently. But right now we're looking at going through the bathrooms basically every hour on the hour and making sure that things look good. And then we'll clean them, highly touched surfaces during the day, with the exception of having to close one down for a deep clean. Otherwise, they will be deep cleaned and sanitized in the evening time and readily available for in the morning.
And Ms. Norton, one of the things that we looked at was we will end up with, if we were able to do a hybrid model, we end up with a very small number of students per sink, and which is one of the big factors. One of the other things that has helped is with the Tuolumne County Public Health Office has explained to us, once again, it's that idea that close contact is within 6 feet for over 15 minutes. And so one of the things, we don't have any breaks that would be over 11 minutes. And so we're hoping that nobody spends more than 4 extra minutes in the bathroom at one time. We are certain that we're going to have to be policing bathrooms at a high rate, but one of the advantages is making sure that we don't have breaks that would allow people to be in there for more than 15 minutes to have that close contact.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments at this point?
Sorry, I do have additional question. In reference to the band room and children and class as a whole, has there been any thought process as to how that's supposed to function in a hybrid / mask situation? Just curious.
Yes, Ms. Denton has done yeoman's work in building a plan for returning of band. The bad side of this is, the negative side is that band and choir, particularly choir, are amongst the last things that will be free to participate in. Choir has shown has been a source multiple times throughout the nation of the spread of COVID because of the aerosol spray during singing, especially in choir. But Ms. Denton has a plan of protective devices, covers for the openings of instruments, and has a plan on moving outside to do all of her instruction. And she's worked with Mark Alberto on putting together a plan where we can use the old swimming pool area, where we can put covers up for students in sun and even in light rain, and to be outside. And that's been one of the biggest factors for reducing the spread of COVID, is being outside. So she does have a plan. It has been approved once by the TCPHO, and we will return with another plan because there's been new guidance on those areas.
I do have another question, speaking on that, going a little bit back to the schedule part. So for classes that have only one period, would teachers be doing a live Zoom for the kids that stayed on distance, while they are also teaching the kids that are in class, such as AP classes where there's only one period a day?
Acacia, you ask very good questions. This is the main reason why we've advocated for a slow move from a 1 day a week on campus to then moving to 2 days a week on campus per cohort. One of the great challenges is how to teach students who are in class and students who are at home at the same time, because that is what's necessary. And our staff has indicated that synchronous instruction, which is instruction where there is a teacher giving instruction at the same time the student is receiving it, as opposed to asynchronous, where a student is receiving instruction that may have been recorded or may not include a teacher. So asynchronous in-person instruction is the highest quality instruction. Synchronous in-person instruction is the highest quality of instruction. The next best is synchronous distance learning. So the initial plan, the hybrid 1 plan, gives 3 days a week of synchronous instruction. One of those days would be with the student in person. The other 2 days, Monday and Friday, would be with the student at distance learning synchronous. What we hope to do is build capacity through training on the asynchronous day, Wednesdays, when teachers would have an opportunity to have training time as well as meet with students who need additional support, to train on how to do that synchronous instruction both in person and home at the same time, so that when we do transition a month in, that we'd be able to give that synchronous instruction in both distance and in person at the same time. There are tools that are available, but we've had teachers make a huge leap in their technology use. Some of our teachers and some of our very best teachers use no technology at all, and now have done things they've told me they thought they would never do, and have found great use for technology. Now we're just going to have to take that next step, and we're hoping for that month to train our teachers and to get them the training so that they can do both that synchronous instruction, so that when we do transfer, it's not 2 days of synchronous in person and 3 days of asynchronous. Instead, what we'd be looking at is 4 days of synchronous instruction and 1 day of asynchronous.
I have another question for you. Thank you, by the way. So it was brought up in a parent email and comment, as well as through multiple students on, oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. I will get back to you. I'm so sorry. I wrote it down. I completely can't find it.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Okay, not hearing, do you, okay. Steve.
My apologies. So for teachers, they have a limited amount of time that they're allowing students to have like office hours. And I know during the school day, we have a limited hour, but for some students, especially those that work, they aren't able to get the help they need. And the teachers will have strict, like, no makeup policies or stuff like that. I know personally, I have a teacher who is very flexible. And on the other hand, I have another teacher who is, if you don't turn it in by 3 p.m. on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you're not going to get the credit even if you turn it in late. Is there going to be something done about that as well?
That remains a teacher's prerogative.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any additional comments from board members? If not, we'll go ahead and call the question. Student preferential vote.
I'm going to abstain from this one, but I would like you guys to keep in mind that on a poll I did put up, 50% of students said yes for the hybrid plan and 50% of students did say no.
Thank you. Trustee
Jim,
Smith. Yes.
Jim, I'm sorry, just for clarity, we're voting on option B with those 2 modifications, right?
That's correct, Eric. Yeah. Okay, with that, we'll go with roll call. Trustee Smith.
Before I vote, just a couple of quick comments. Again, I want to thank Superintendent Pelfrey and Mark Alberto and the staff and all of those who have met regularly to try to determine some sort of a reopening plan. And to the parents who have put forth heartfelt concerns about all of this, and to all of the board members. I know we have all struggled with this. Eric talked about losing sleep a few times, and that's a genuine thing that's happening. This is a very difficult decision. In light of that, I do vote aye.
Thank you. Trustee Norton.
I would be no.
Trustee Andel.
Aye.
Trustee Scott.
Aye.
Trustee Riggs, I also would like to thank Superintendent Pelfrey, the administration, faculty, and the staff for all their hard work. And I also want to express my appreciation to all the individuals who provided comments to the board on this issue. I think we all want what is best for the students and the employees of the district. With that, I also vote aye. Motion carries. With that, the meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.